Welcome to the Hidden Wealth Coins. Imagine a single forgotten penny hiding the power to rewrite your destiny overnight. These wheat pennies, born in ordinary years and spent without care, secretly carry histories so rare they can shock the modern world. One tiny coin, overlooked for decades, could unlock unimaginable wealth, turning pocket change into life-changing fortune and transforming an ordinary person into a legend in a single moment that defies logic, time, and expectation itself. First up, the wheat penny 1-cent coin is not just a small piece of copper. It is a silent witness to American history, ambition, mistakes, and rare miracles hidden in plain sight. When people hear 1948 wheat penny, many assume it is ordinary, something that passed through millions of hands during everyday transactions. But history teaches us that value does not always come from age alone. It comes from circumstance, rarity, condition, and the stories locked inside metal. Some coins survive as common relics, while others escape the ordinary path and become legends. The 1948 wheat penny belongs to a generation of coins struck in a time when America was rebuilding itself after World War II, a period full of economic tension, human hope, and industrial pressure inside U.S. mints. Coins from this era were produced rapidly, and in that rush, tiny variations, errors, and exceptional survivals quietly came into existence, unnoticed by the public for decades. To understand why a single wheat penny could ever be worth an unimaginable amount, you must first understand the era that created it. In 1948, the United States was transforming from wartime production into a consumer-driven economy. Metal supplies were still controlled, minting equipment was heavily used, and quality control was not what modern collectors imagine today. Wheat pennies were still made primarily of copper, and every coin carried Abraham Lincoln's calm portrait on the front, while the reverse displayed 2 wheat stalks representing national prosperity and agricultural strength. Most of these coins circulated heavily, suffered scratches, corrosion, and wear, and eventually disappeared into jars, drawers, or the ground itself. But a very small number escaped circulation almost immediately, preserved in nearly perfect condition, and those survivors are where true value begins to grow. The real magic of the 1948 wheat penny lies in condition and anomalies, not in the date alone. A coin that looks ordinary at first glance can become extraordinary if it carries subtle minting differences, die characteristics, or production irregularities that set it apart from millions of others. During high-speed minting, dies could clash, wear unevenly, or produce slightly misaligned strikes. These tiny differences were never meant to be collectibles. They were accidents of pressure, metal flow, and machinery fatigue. At the time, no one cared. Pennies were pennies. But decades later, collectors learned to recognize these minute details, and suddenly a coin that once bought candy became a historical artifact capable of rewriting someone's financial future. Another factor that elevates certain 1948 wheat pennies into a different universe of value is survival rate. Coins are meant to circulate, not to be protected. Most wheat pennies from that year were used daily, lost, damaged, or melted. A coin that remains in pristine, untouched condition after more than 7 decades is not common. It is rare by survival alone. When copper surfaces retain their original luster, sharp strike lines, and untouched details, collectors see more than beauty, they see time defeated. A single coin preserved perfectly from that era represents millions that failed to survive the same journey. This imbalance between how many were made and how few remain flawless is what fuels extreme value. The psychology of collectors also plays a powerful role in driving prices into shocking territory. Serious collectors do not simply buy coins. They chase completion, perfection, and uniqueness. When a collector has spent decades assembling a set and realizes one specific coin stands between them and completion, logic disappears. Emotion takes control. At that moment, price becomes secondary to possession. A rare, high-grade 1948 wheat penny with distinctive characteristics can become the final missing piece, and when 2 wealthy collectors want the same coin, value can escalate rapidly. The coin itself does not change, but its meaning does, and meaning is where money bends. History has shown that coins connected to transitional periods often carry hidden importance. The late 1940s marked the closing chapter of the wheat penny era, which would soon be replaced by the Lincoln Memorial reverse. Collectors view this period as the final breath of a classic design that had existed since 1909. The 1948 issue sits close to that transition, and coins from such moments attract special attention because they represent the end of an identity. Owning one in exceptional condition is like owning the final pages of a long-running story, untouched and perfectly preserved. There is also the mystery factor, which cannot be ignored. Some of the most valuable coins in history were not famous when they were minted. Their stories emerged slowly, sometimes through accidental discoveries in old collections, inherited estates, or forgotten safety deposit boxes. A wheat penny pulled from an unassuming source can shock the numismatic world if it displays characteristics no one documented before. That possibility is what keeps collectors searching, examining, and believing that another miracle coin is still out there, waiting quietly among ordinary cents. What makes the idea of overnight fortune so powerful is not just greed, but hope. The wheat penny symbolizes accessibility. Unlike gold coins or rare bullion, a penny feels reachable. It feels possible. Anyone could have one without knowing it. That emotional connection fuels stories, dreams, and relentless searching. When people imagine a small copper coin transforming a life, they are really responding to the idea that history still hides opportunities in everyday objects. The 1948 wheat penny becomes a symbol of that belief, whether the final price reaches thousands or explodes far beyond expectations. Coins that achieve legendary value often do so because they combine multiple layers of rarity. It is never just the date. It is the date plus the condition, plus the strike quality, plus the story of survival. When all these elements align in a single coin, the market reacts intensely. The fewer comparable examples exist, the stronger the reaction becomes. Collectors are not buying metal, they are buying an unrepeatable moment frozen in copper. That is why prices can feel irrational, even unbelievable, to outsiders. Another overlooked aspect is generational wealth transfer. As older collectors pass on their collections, truly rare coins resurface into the market, sometimes after decades of silence. When a long-hidden wheat penny finally appears, it can reset expectations entirely. The cultural power of Abraham Lincoln also amplifies interest. Lincoln is not just a historical figure. He is a symbol of unity, struggle, and leadership. Coins bearing his image carry emotional weight beyond numismatics. When collectors hold a wheat penny, they are holding a physical connection to American ideals and resilience. That symbolism matters, especially in times of uncertainty, when tangible history feels more valuable than abstract numbers on a screen. In the end, the true power of the wheat penny is not just financial. It represents curiosity, patience, and respect for history. The possibility that something so small could carry such weight keeps collectors searching and storytellers speaking. And while not every 1948 wheat penny will change a life, the belief that one could is what keeps the legend alive, shining quietly in copper, waiting for the right moment to reveal its full story. Second up, the 1953 wheat penny 1-cent coin may appear simple at first glance, but simplicity often hides the most powerful stories. This coin was born during a quiet yet deeply important chapter in American history, a time when the nation had survived war, entered a new global role, and was slowly redefining its identity. By 1953, the wheat penny design had already lived for decades, becoming one of the most familiar coins ever produced in the United States. Yet familiarity does not mean insignificance. In fact, it is often within mass production that the rarest survivors emerge, escaping wear, damage, and loss to become silent witnesses of history with extraordinary potential. The year 1953 represents a moment when America was stepping into a modern era while still holding onto traditions of the past. The wheat penny, with its classic wheat ears on the reverse and Abraham Lincoln's dignified portrait on the front, symbolized continuity and stability. Millions of these coins were struck, intended for daily life, passed from hand to hand in grocery stores, bus fares, and small purchases that built everyday America. Most of these coins lived hard lives, scratched by circulation, darkened by oxidation, and forgotten without ceremony. But a tiny fraction followed a different path, one of preservation, perfection, and eventual rediscovery. True value in coins is never about how many were made, it is about how many survived in exceptional condition. A 1953 wheat penny that avoided circulation, retained sharp detail, and preserved its original surface became something entirely different from its common counterparts. Time is the greatest enemy of copper, and every year that passes eliminates more examples from the highest condition levels. When a coin reaches decades old without losing its clarity or structure, collectors no longer see it as spare change, they see it as a victory over entropy. That transformation is where value begins its quiet climb. What elevates certain 1953 wheat pennies into legendary status is the presence of subtle characteristics that separate them from the ordinary. Minting is never a perfect process, especially during periods of high output and aging equipment. Dies wear down, pressure fluctuates, and metal flows differently with each strike. These factors create small but meaningful differences that only trained eyes notice. When such differences appear on a coin that is already preserved in remarkable condition, the result is a piece that cannot be easily replaced, and replacement scarcity is the foundation of extreme worth. Collectors are driven by more than money. They are driven by completion, history, and the pursuit of the exceptional. A wheat penny from 1953 that stands apart becomes more than an object, it becomes a challenge. When collectors reach advanced stages in their collections, they are no longer buying dates, they are hunting quality and uniqueness. At that level, price loses its traditional meaning. What matters is ownership, legacy, and the satisfaction of holding something few others on earth can possess. This mindset is what allows a single cent to enter conversations normally reserved for rare paintings or historic artifacts. The emotional power of the wheat penny cannot be underestimated. It represents a time when money felt tangible, when a single coin had weight, texture, and presence. People who grew up with wheat pennies remember them as part of daily life, and nostalgia plays a powerful role in collecting. When nostalgia meets rarity, demand intensifies. The 1953 issue sits near the closing chapter of the wheat penny era, adding symbolic importance to its story. Collectors are drawn to endings, to final chapters, to coins that represent the last echoes of a long tradition. There is also mystery surrounding coins that quietly gain attention decades after their creation. Some of the most valuable coins in history were not celebrated at birth. They were ignored, misplaced, or stored away without recognition. A 1953 wheat penny discovered today in extraordinary condition can shock even seasoned collectors, not because the date is unknown, but because survival at that level feels almost impossible. That sense of improbability fuels excitement and drives competition, pushing value far beyond expectations. Stories of overnight fortune capture the imagination because they challenge the belief that wealth must always be slow or inaccessible. The idea that a humble penny could change a life taps into something deeply human: hope. The wheat penny is approachable, familiar, and unassuming, which makes its potential all the more powerful. It reminds people that history still hides surprises in ordinary places, waiting for someone patient enough to notice. This belief keeps collectors searching rolls, estates, and old collections with relentless curiosity. As time moves forward, the number of high-quality 1953 wheat pennies will only decrease. Copper reacts, surfaces degrade, and mishandling continues to erase history. Every year that passes strengthens the position of surviving examples. Markets respond to this slow disappearance with increasing intensity, especially as new generations of collectors enter the field with greater resources and global access. What was once a national hobby has become an international pursuit, and demand now comes from far beyond American borders. Another layer of value comes from the image on the coin itself. Abraham Lincoln is not just a president. He is a symbol of endurance, unity, and moral resolve. Coins bearing his likeness carry cultural and emotional weight that extends beyond numismatics. When a collector holds a wheat penny, they are holding a physical connection to ideals that shaped a nation. That connection adds depth to the coin story, making it desirable not only for rarity, but for meaning. Coins that achieve extraordinary valuations do so because they represent convergence. The right year, the right condition, the right story, and the right moment in the market must all align. A 1953 wheat penny that meets these conditions becomes more than a collectible, it becomes a statement. It tells a story of survival, attention, and historical continuity that cannot be recreated. That irreproducibility is what transforms modest metal into legendary wealth. The passage of time has a way of clarifying importance. What once seemed common becomes rare, and what once seemed insignificant becomes valuable. The wheat penny's journey reflects this truth perfectly. From everyday currency to historical artifact, its evolution mirrors society's growing respect for tangible history in a digital age. People seek objects that cannot be copied, deleted, or replicated, and coins answer that desire with authenticity. Ultimately, the story of the 1953 wheat penny is not just about money. It is about awareness, patience, and respect for the past. Not every coin will unlock unimaginable fortune, But every coin carries a story waiting to be understood. Those who recognize that truth approach collecting not with haste, but with care. And sometimes, when history, rarity, and preservation align, a single cent proves that even the smallest things can hold the power to change a destiny overnight. Third up, the 1955 wheat penny 1-cent coin holds a place in American coin history that feels almost mythical, not because it was meant to be rare, but because fate quietly shaped it into legend. Born in the middle of a booming post-war America, this coin entered circulation during a time of optimism, industry, and rapid growth. Millions of wheat pennies were produced every year, flowing through hands without a second thought. Yet history has a way of selecting a few ordinary objects and lifting them into extraordinary status. The 1955 wheat penny is one of those rare cases where a humble cent crossed the boundary between everyday currency and life-changing artifact. By 1955, the wheat penny design was approaching the end of its long journey. The familiar wheat ears on the reverse had already symbolized American strength and self-reliance for decades, while Abraham Lincoln's portrait remained a steady reminder of unity and perseverance. Coins from this era were struck quickly to meet heavy demand, and speed often came at the cost of perfection. The minting environment was loud, fast, and relentless, and within that environment, certain coins were born different. These differences were not intentional, not planned, and not recognized at the time, which is exactly why they later became so powerful. The true value of a 1955 wheat penny does not lie in how common the year was, but in how uncommon certain survivors became. Coins are meant to be used, touched, dropped, scratched, and worn away by time. Most 1955 wheat pennies lived exactly that life, losing sharp detail and original surfaces as the years passed. But a very small number escaped this fate, either through immediate preservation or sheer luck. When a coin remains sharp, bold, and visually striking after decades, it no longer belongs to the world of spare change. It becomes a witness that endured where millions did not. What separates legendary coins from ordinary ones is not size or metal, but uniqueness. The 1955 wheat penny gained its mystique because certain examples revealed dramatic visual characteristics that shocked collectors when they were finally noticed. These were not decorative changes, but powerful anomalies born from mechanical circumstances. At the moment of striking, something went wrong, or perhaps something went unusually right, and the result was a coin that looked unmistakably different from everything else around it. That visual impact is what burned the 1955 wheat penny into collector memory. Collectors are storytellers at heart, and the 1955 wheat penny tells a story that feels almost rebellious. It challenges the idea that perfection is always planned and that value must be deliberate. Instead, it proves that accidents, when preserved, can become priceless. Once collectors recognized that some 1955 wheat pennies stood apart in unmistakable ways, demand surged. People were no longer chasing a date, they were chasing an event frozen in metal. Owning such a coin became a statement of awareness, knowledge, and triumph. Condition plays an almost brutal role in determining value. Two coins from the same year can exist worlds apart in worth simply because of how they survived time. A 1955 wheat penny that retains clarity, balance, and presence commands attention instantly. When such a coin appears untouched, with strong definition and undeniable character, collectors stop comparing prices and start competing. At that level, the coin is no longer evaluated against cents, but against scarcity itself. There is something deeply powerful about the idea that unimaginable wealth could come from something so small. The wheat penny embodies accessibility, and that is what makes its legend spread so far. Anyone could have touched one. Anyone could have ignored one. And someone, somewhere, preserved one without realizing what they were holding. This possibility fuels endless fascination. It suggests that history still hides rewards for patience, curiosity, and respect for the past. The market for rare coins is driven not just by numbers, but by emotion and timing. When a truly special 1955 wheat penny appears, it does not simply enter a marketplace, it enters a moment. Collectors with means understand that opportunities like this do not repeat easily. Once a legendary example disappears into a private collection, it may not resurface for decades, if ever. That urgency pushes value upward with surprising speed. Another layer of importance comes from generational transition. As collections pass from one generation to the next, rare coins re-emerge into a world that understands them better than before. Knowledge grows, appreciation deepens, and respect increases. A 1955 wheat penny discovered today is evaluated with far more insight than it would have been in the past. That expanded understanding adds weight to every detail, every line, and every irregularity the coin carries. Abraham Lincoln's presence on the coin adds quiet gravity to its story. His image represents endurance, sacrifice, and moral strength, values that resonate deeply across generations. A coin bearing his likeness is not merely currency, it is cultural memory. When such a coin becomes rare, preserved, and historically charged, its appeal extends beyond collectors to historians, investors, and institutions seeking tangible connections to the past. Coins that reach extraordinary valuations do so because they exist at the intersection of rarity, recognition, and desire. The 1955 wheat penny earned its reputation not through marketing or exaggeration, but through undeniable visual and historical impact. Once recognized, it could never return to anonymity. That irreversible transformation is what separates legendary coins from forgotten ones. Time continues to work in favor of surviving examples. As years pass, fewer high-quality coins remain, while interest only expands. In a world increasingly dominated by digital assets, physical history feels more valuable than ever. Coins offer permanence, authenticity, and proof of survival. The 1955 wheat penny stands as a reminder that history does not fade evenly. It concentrates value where endurance exists. In the end, the story of the 1955 wheat penny is not just about money or sudden fortune. It is about attention, preservation, and the quiet power of history waiting to be recognized. Not every penny holds unimaginable wealth, but the belief that one might keeps the legend alive. And sometimes, when time, rarity, and human curiosity align, a single cent proves it has the power to change a destiny overnight. Fourth up, the 1944 wheat penny 1-cent coin carries a weight far heavier than its copper body suggests, because it was born during one of the most intense and defining moments in American history. This coin emerged in the shadow of World War II, when the entire nation was focused on survival, sacrifice, and victory. Every factory, every resource, and every worker was under pressure, and even the smallest objects, including coins, were affected by this global struggle. The wheat penny of 1944 was not simply currency. It was part of a wartime system where metal itself had strategic importance, and that reality alone gives this coin a story unlike most others. By 1944, America was deeply engaged in war, and copper was a critical material. Ammunition, wiring, and military equipment demanded enormous quantities of metal, forcing the nation to rethink how everyday objects were produced. Coins were still needed for commerce, but they existed within an environment of strict resource control and urgency. The wheat penny continued to feature Abraham Lincoln on the front, calm and resolute, while the wheat ears on the reverse symbolized endurance and hope during uncertain times. Millions of these coins entered circulation, passed quickly through hands focused on far more urgent concerns than preservation. Most 1944 wheat pennies lived harsh lives. They were handled constantly, dropped into pockets, scraped against other coins, and exposed to moisture, dirt, and time. In wartime America, no one was setting aside pennies as future treasures. Survival and functionality mattered more than condition. As a result, the vast majority of these coins lost sharp detail early, becoming worn reminders of daily struggle. That reality is precisely what makes surviving high-quality examples so astonishing. When a coin from such a turbulent era remains clean, sharp, and visually strong, it feels almost defiant against history itself. What elevates certain 1944 wheat pennies into a realm of extraordinary value is not the year alone, but how unpredictably some were created. Wartime minting conditions were far from ideal. Equipment was heavily used, dyes aged quickly, and speed often replaced precision. In this environment, unusual results emerged. Coins could be struck with unexpected characteristics, subtle differences, or unusual metal behavior that no one noticed at the time. These coins blended into circulation unnoticed, carrying secrets that would only be revealed decades later to trained eyes. Collectors understand that rarity is not always about how many coins were made, but about how many survived in meaningful condition. A 1944 wheat penny that avoided heavy circulation, retained bold design elements, and preserved its original character represents a statistical anomaly. It survived a war economy, decades of handling, and the natural decay of copper. That survival transforms it from common history into exceptional history, And exceptional history is where value begins to rise dramatically. The emotional power of wartime coins cannot be ignored. Holding a 1944 wheat penny is like holding a fragment of a nation under pressure. It represents a time when people rationed food, wrote letters to loved ones overseas, and lived with uncertainty every day. When collectors connect emotionally to an object, value deepens beyond metal and condition. A coin from this era becomes a symbol of resilience, and symbols carry power in markets driven by human desire and memory. The idea that unimaginable wealth could be hidden in a 1-cent coin captures attention because it feels almost unreal. Yet history repeatedly proves that overlooked objects often become priceless once their stories are fully understood. The wheat penny is especially powerful because it feels accessible. It does not look like treasure. It looks ordinary. That ordinariness is what allows it to slip through time unnoticed, waiting for someone patient enough to recognize its significance. Condition acts as the final gatekeeper between modest value and extraordinary worth. Two 1944 wheat pennies can appear similar at first glance, yet one may carry exponentially greater value simply because of how it was preserved. Sharp lettering, balanced features, and a surface that tells a clean story of survival instantly separate a coin from the ordinary. At that level, collectors stop thinking like buyers and start thinking like guardians of history. As years pass, the number of exceptional 1944 wheat pennies continues to shrink. Copper reacts to its environment, and every mishandled coin is another piece of history lost. Meanwhile, interest in tangible historical objects grows stronger in a digital world. Coins offer something screens cannot: permanence. A surviving wheat penny from 1944 becomes more desirable with each passing decade, not because it changes, but because the world around it does. Collector competition plays a critical role in pushing value into shocking territory. When a truly special example surfaces, it attracts attention from seasoned collectors, investors, and institutions alike. These buyers understand that rarity cannot be manufactured. Once a coin like this disappears into a private collection, it may not return to the market for a generation. That awareness creates urgency, and urgency reshapes prices rapidly. Abraham Lincoln's image on the coin adds an additional layer of gravity. He represents unity, sacrifice, and moral resolve, values that resonate strongly with the wartime context of 1944. A coin bearing his likeness during such a period feels historically charged. It is not just a portrait, it is a reminder of leadership during crisis. That symbolism enhances the coin's appeal far beyond its physical size. Coins that achieve legendary status do so because they exist at the intersection of history, rarity, and recognition. The 1944 wheat penny earned its place through circumstance rather than intention. It was shaped by war, preserved by chance, and later elevated by understanding. Once that recognition occurs, the coin's identity changes permanently. It is no longer spare change, it is a documented survivor of a defining era. The passage of time has a way of rewarding patience. Coins that once seemed unremarkable can become central to powerful stories as context deepens and scarcity becomes clear. The 1944 wheat penny stands as proof that history does not distribute value evenly. It concentrates it where survival, meaning, and awareness meet. In the end, the legend of the 1944 wheat penny is not just about the possibility of sudden fortune. It is about respect for history and the quiet truth that even the smallest objects can carry immense power. Not every coin will change a life, but every coin holds a story. And sometimes, when history and preservation align perfectly, a single cent holds the power to change a destiny overnight. Fifth up. The 1951 wheat penny 1-cent coin appears quiet and unassuming, yet behind its modest copper surface lies a story shaped by transition, tension, and silent survival. This coin was born at a time when America was no longer at war but had not yet found peace of mind. The nation stood between memory and momentum, carrying the weight of World War II while stepping cautiously into a new global role. Coins from this period were produced for utility, not for admiration, and that is precisely why the few that escaped ordinary fate carry such astonishing potential today. The 1951 wheat penny is not loud history, it is subtle history, and subtle history often becomes the most valuable. By 1951, the wheat penny design had already lived a long and respected life. 4 decades, the wheat ears on the reverse symbolized growth, stability, and American self-reliance, while Abraham Lincoln's portrait projected calm leadership across generations. These coins moved through everyday transactions at a time when people were rebuilding homes, starting families, and reshaping their lives. Pennies were tools of movement, not objects of preservation. They were spent without thought, collected only by accident, and lost without regret. That careless treatment shaped the destiny of the 1951 wheat penny more than anyone realized. Most 1951 wheat pennies were used hard and early. Copper darkened, details softened, and surfaces collected the marks of countless exchanges. These coins were carried in pockets, dropped on counters, and scraped against other metal thousands of times. In such conditions, survival in high quality became almost impossible. That is why a 1951 wheat penny that remains sharp, balanced, and visually powerful today feels almost unnatural, as if it slipped through time untouched while millions of its siblings disappeared into air. The value of a coin is not created by age alone, but by resistance to destruction. A wheat penny from 1951 that avoided heavy circulation tells a story of chance and restraint. Perhaps it was set aside unknowingly, perhaps it rested quietly in a drawer, or perhaps it simply escaped attention. Whatever the reason, its survival rewrites its identity. It stops being currency and starts being evidence. Evidence that time does not erase everything equally, and that rarity often forms quietly, without announcement. Minting during the early 1950s was driven by efficiency and volume. Speed mattered more than precision, and consistency was not always guaranteed. Machines worked relentlessly, dies wore down, and metal responded differently under pressure. In this environment, subtle variations emerged, invisible to the public but deeply meaningful to collectors decades later. These characteristics were not planned, documented, or celebrated at the time. They were mistakes of motion and moments of imbalance, and when preserved, they became signatures of uniqueness. Collectors are drawn to coins that feel alive with story, and the 1951 wheat penny offers that depth. It represents a bridge between eras, standing after wartime urgency and before modern design change. The wheat penny itself would soon disappear, replaced by a new reverse that marked a different cultural mood. Coins from just before such transitions carry emotional gravity. They feel like the final breath of something familiar, and collectors instinctively sense that weight. The idea that unimaginable wealth could be hidden in a 1-cent coin grips the imagination because it challenges assumptions. A penny feels insignificant, almost disposable. That perception is what allows rare examples to hide in plain sight for decades. The 1951 wheat penny benefits from this invisibility. It does not announce its potential. It waits quietly, letting time thin the population of survivors until scarcity sharpens attention and transforms curiosity into obsession. Condition is the great divider between ordinary and extraordinary. Two 1951 wheat pennies can share the same date and design, yet exist in entirely different financial universes. When a coin displays clarity, strong detail, and visual harmony after so many years, collectors do not see luck, they see rarity proven by survival. At that level, comparison becomes meaningless. The coin stands alone, judged not by cents but by scarcity itself. As decades pass, the number of truly exceptional 1951 wheat pennies continues to decline. Copper reacts, environments change, and mishandling erases history daily. Meanwhile, interest in physical, irreplaceable objects grows stronger in a world dominated by digital value. Coins offer permanence, authenticity, and silence. They do not update, disappear, or reset. A surviving wheat penny from 1951 becomes more powerful with each passing year simply because fewer remain capable of telling the same story. Collector competition amplifies this power dramatically. When a rare example appears, it attracts not casual buyers, but seasoned collectors who understand timing. They know opportunities like this do not repeat easily. Once a coin of this caliber enters a private collection, it may not resurface for generations. That awareness creates urgency, and urgency reshapes value faster than logic ever could. Abraham Lincoln's image adds quiet authority to the coin's presence. He symbolizes unity, endurance, and moral clarity, qualities that resonate deeply during times of national rebuilding. A coin bearing his likeness in 1951 feels historically grounded, carrying not just metal, but meaning. That symbolism deepens emotional connection, and emotional connection is one of the strongest forces in collecting. Coins that reach legendary value do so because they exist at the intersection of history, rarity, and recognition. The 1951 wheat penny was never meant to be legendary. It earned that status slowly, through neglect, survival, and later understanding. Once recognized, it cannot return to anonymity. Its story becomes fixed, and its identity transforms permanently. Time rewards patience more than speed. Coins that were once overlooked gain importance as context deepens and scarcity becomes undeniable. The 1951 wheat penny stands as proof that value does not always rise loudly. Sometimes it grows quietly, waiting for the world to catch up to what history already knows. In the end, the legend of the 1951 wheat penny is not just about sudden fortune or dramatic wealth. It is about awareness, respect, and the power of preservation. Not every penny holds unimaginable value, but every penny holds history. And sometimes, when chance and time align perfectly, a single cent carries the power to change a destiny overnight.